Hi everyone, my name is Sylvette Guitar and I'm a nurse consultant at NANB. I am presenting a webinar on social media, mobile devices, and information technologies used in the workplace. The duration of this webinar is about 15 to 20 minutes. Let's first look at what are social media. They are online and mobile tools used to share opinions, information, and experiences, images and video or audio clips, and include websites and applications used for social networking. Common sources of social media include, but are not limited to, social networking sites such as Facebook and LinkedIn, personal, professional, and anonymous blogs, true local and microblogs such as Twitter, content sharing websites such as YouTube and Instagram, and discussion forums and message boards. Social media in its many different forms has become very easy to use and a preferred means for communicating with family and friends. While you may think using social media tools for these purposes is your personal business, you must be aware that the sharing of information, opinions, and photos through these means can easily cross boundaries and therefore have a negative impact on your professional image and the nursing profession. So what does NANB has to say about social media? The Nurses Act states that RNs and NPs are accountable to the profession and for any conduct unbecoming of a member, including any conduct that might adversely affect the standing or good name of the practice of nursing or the association. This expectation applies to all RNs and NPs and can include conduct that occur outside the work time or practice setting. When using social media, there are several strategies nurses can use to minimize risk and continue to meet the standards of practice. I am going to share several resources or strategies during the presentation, and the first one is professional presence. So nurses use the same level of professionalism in their online and face-to-face interactions. They keep work-related social media activities separate from personal social media activities, especially if they use social media in their nursing role. They must be aware of situations that may present a potential, perceived, or actual conflict of interest. Nurses consider and use other available and appropriate channels to address work-related incidents, issues with colleagues, or workplace concerns rather than posting on social media. Nurses do not post information that gives the impression that they are not able to provide unbiased care. They separate their personal opinions from nursing opinions, especially if they differ, and they consider not identifying themselves as a nurse in their online profile. Let's now talk about confidentiality and privacy. Nurses maintain confidentiality and privacy of clients' and coworkers' information. A breach of confidentiality or privacy, even if inadvertently, can damage the nurse-client relationship and negatively impact the nursing profession. Nurses report confidentiality and privacy breaches immediately to their employer and ensure they understand that posting anonymously or under a pseudonym does not protect them from the possible consequences of a breach of confidentiality. Let's look at professional boundaries. Nurses maintain professional boundaries by not accepting friend requests from or initiate a friend request with current or former clients or their families. Connecting in this way could be interpreted as a continuation of the nurse-client relationship, or that the client is entitled to access the nurse's services in ways other clients are not. And nurses do not post, repost, transmit, or disseminate any information that may be reasonably anticipated to violate the client's rights to confidentiality or privacy, or otherwise degrade or embarrass the client. Another key element to consider is employer policies. Nurses review and follow employer policies related to the use of personal and professional social media. They do not speak on behalf of their employer or the profession unless authorized to do so, and do not conduct professional discussions or communication on social media without clear employer policies and processes. Integrity and the integrity of the nursing profession. Nurses use caution if they identify themselves as a nurse online, whether in a biography or in a specific post. When they identify themselves as a nurse on social media or use a platform to share nursing information, they immediately create a connection between their personal and professional life and are expected to uphold all professional obligations. And nurses do not offer specific health-related advice in response to questions or comments outside an established therapeutic relationship. Nurses need to be accountable when they're using social media. They can do this by recognizing that they are accountable to relevant legislation, standards of practice, code of ethics, guidelines, and employer policies. Nurses work with their manager or employer to develop a social media policy if there is not one available, and ensure they understand that inappropriate use of social media, including personal use while working, can result in a complaint to their employer or CNNB. Either of these may result in disciplinary action. And finally, freedom of expression. Nurses balance their right to express their personal concerns and opinions regarding healthcare with the responsibility to avoid compromising the public's trust in the nursing profession. They attempt to resolve concerns with their employer or others in the healthcare system rather than bringing them to a public social media forum, and recognize their accountability to meet their standards of practice and code of ethics. There must be an appropriate balance maintained between their freedom of expression and the public trust in the nursing profession. Their conduct may cross into professional misconduct. We encourage you to consult the practice guideline on social media available on the CNNB website for more important things to consider and helpful resources. Let's now talk about mobile devices and information technologies. Mobile devices can be used in different ways that include but is not limited to information technologies such as text, emails, pictures, and apps. And before using these various forms of technologies within the workplace, our NZNPs should ask themselves, are there policies that authorize or govern the use of this technology within the workplace? If yes, we suggest you consult them, and if no, well, our NZNPs are encouraged to advocate for the creation of such policies. What key elements are important to consider when using mobile devices and information technologies? First of all, privacy breach. Our NNPs have a professional and legal obligation to protect the privacy of patients' personal health information. This is commonly accomplished through the use of strong passwords and encryption to safeguard electronic personal health information being communicated through mobile devices. There is also workplace integration. More commonly, healthcare employers are implementing bring your own device programs in which employees are permitted or even encouraged to use their own mobile devices in the workplace. Employers with these types of programs will implement policies, protocols, and systems that enable healthcare practitioners to use wireless devices to securely interact with other healthcare practitioners and to access patient records. There is also managing expectations. So RNs and NPs are reminded to manage patient expectations about permitted purposes of these communications, how quickly they will respond to inquiries, and what to do if they are unavailable. Reasonable limits and response times can be clearly communicated to patients. And finally, very important, infection control. Studies reveal the presence of methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, MRSA, and other forms of bacteria on mobile devices and palms and fingers of nurses. For this reason, hand hygiene should be repeated after the use of mobile devices and prior to every contact with the patient. Let's see what is important to consider when using text. Verify employer policies to determine if transmission of information by text is permitted. If permitted, determine what content can be transmitted by text. Be cautious regarding patient security and confidentiality before texting, and be very vigilant with autocorrect and typos. Errors could cause serious harm to the patient. What is important to consider when using emails? Be familiar with and follow employer policies. Consider obtaining the patient's written consent before transmitting personal health information via email, or alternatively, document the patient's verbal consent. Use encryption when sending to an external email recipient. Confirm the correct email address for the intended recipient before transmitting personal health information, and never share identifiable personal health information with a client through your personal email address. Let's now look at what is important to consider when you're taking photos or pictures of your clients. Are there clear employer policies on use of mobile devices to take photographs of clients? And as you can see, I speak a lot about employer policies. They are very important and give specific information to guide your practice. So if you don't have policies regarding these issues or topics, well, we encourage you to advocate for them. Refrain from using personal mobile device and use employer-issued mobile device if possible because of the high risk. Client must consent before you take a picture. Photo is part of the healthcare record and must be deleted from mobile device immediately after its use. And just pause and take a second and ask yourself this question. Is this really necessary? Is there an alternative to taking a picture of a client? Let's talk about healthcare apps. What is important to consider when you're using them? Only use apps from reliable sources that are updated frequently and approved by employer if applicable. Review and set appropriate privacy settings on apps and mobile devices. Avoid relying on apps to complete tasks you could not otherwise complete on your own. They don't take the place of your knowledge, your skill, and your competence. And always remember, apps do not take the place of your professional judgment. Avoid recommending apps to a patient unless you have full confidence in it and, if applicable, employer has endorsed it. So we encourage you to consult the mobile devices and information technologies used in the workplace fact sheet available on the NANB website for more important things to consider and helpful resources. If you have any questions related to social media, mobile devices, and information technologies used in the workplace, or for any other questions related to your practice, please contact a nurse consultant at practiceconsultation@nanb.nb.ca. Thank you for your attention.